Working on all fours, laying 4x4-inch ceramic tiles in a 10x12 kitchen was hard. Ronnie Jackson carefully applied glue to the next tile, then combined it with the previous one. The tile stood up properly, and he nodded in satisfaction. A deviation of a couple of millimeters here. A couple of millimeters there can lead to the failure of the project. And because Eccles Renovation and Remodeling had a 100% satisfaction guaranteed policy, Ronnie made sure that every tile was precisely laid before moving on. As if sensing that he had reached the end of the row, Ronnie's wife, Charlotte, called. Eccles Renovation and Remodeling at Ronnie's office. Ronnie answered the call. "Ronnie, it's me." Charlotte snapped irritably. "Yeah," Ronnie said, already reaching for the tile box to start the next row. There was a time when Ronnie would answer the phone and his wife would giggle and say, "Hi, honey, it's me." Ronnie couldn't remember the last time she'd said, "Hi, honey, when are you going to finish?" Charlotte snapped. "I'm in Pritchard's kitchen," Ronnie replied. Looking at the nearly 8 feet he'd finished, it'll take me about 3 hours, give or take, I think. Okay, Charlotte snapped and ended the conversation. Ronnie wanted to hurry up. He had a strong desire to cut this job short, but he forced himself to move slowly and methodically. But even as his hands were doing their work, his mind was thinking about his wife, with whom he had lived for 21, almost 22 years. Ronnie met Charlotte Eccles on his second day at Eccles Renovation and Remodeling. Charlotte walked into John Eccles' office, apologies flying from her lips for her poor performance at John W. High School. Dawson's. She was a burly brunette with long wavy hair and patches of large pimples. Ronnie looked at the 2 basketball-sized buttocks sticking out of her denim scraps, then returned his attention to the selection of hand tools in John's tool shed. "This is my daughter," John growled at Ronnie. "Do you understand me, my daughter?" "Yes, sir," Ronnie said, fighting the urge to shrug indifferently. Now, sensing that her father did not want her to communicate with his new employee, Charlotte made a habit of smiling coquettishly and greeting Ronnie whenever their paths crossed. For his part, Ronnie was always polite to the girl, but did not encourage her attention. "What did I tell you, huh?" John growled at Ronnie. "There's no need to chase after my daughter. Okay? Sir, I'm not chasing your daughter," Ronnie said honestly. The truth was that 21-year-old Ronnie found 17-year-old Charlotte Rayner Eccles nothing more than a nuisance. She was at least 50 pounds overweight, had terrible acne, and there was something particularly repulsive about her. Ronnie also found Charlotte rather immature. "Hi, Ronnie," Charlotte said coyly one day when Ronnie and another Eccles employee were unloading their equipment after a long day. "Yeah," Ronnie said. Struggling with an unopened bag of quick-drying cement, Charlotte leaned forward, giving Ronnie an unobstructed view of the front of her blouse. "That's nice," Ronnie said. "Well, happy birthday." Another employee smiled. "So, Ronnie, what are you going to give me for my birthday?" Charlotte cooed. Close your eyes," Ronnie suggested, managing to pull the bag up to the back door of the pickup truck. "Good," Charlotte giggled. "What do you see?" Ronnie asked, throwing his bag into the wheelbarrow. Nothing," Charlotte said. "This is my gift." "Happy birthday," Ronnie said, and dragged the bag of cement to the barn. But Lois Eccles got John Eccles to invite Ronnie Jackson to their house for Charlotte's birthday party. A pharmacy in Dolans, Utah sold Ronnie a beautiful greeting card, and a pawn shop in Fairway, Utah sold Ronnie a beautiful silver bracelet for $20. Lois made John ask Ronnie to accompany Charlotte to the prom. Ronnie did accompany Charlotte, wincing at the sight of her in a tight sleeveless dress. However, Ronnie was very kind. He posed for photos, danced with Charlotte, then took her home and kissed her goodnight. A few days later, John growled at Ronnie that Charlotte was heartbroken because Ronnie hadn't called her. Ronnie pursed his lips, but still called Charlotte and asked her out. This date led to another date. On the 5th date, Charlotte gave Ronnie her virginity. Tracy Lois Jackson was born 5 months after their wedding. And for the next 10 years, Ronnie Jackson was given the shittiest job that Eccles Renovations and Remodeling had. Ronnie was sure that on some of these jobs, John Eccles went out of his way to make sure Eccles Renovation and Remodeling got the job, just so he could turn around and impose this backbreaking job on his son-in-law. For the first 16 years of their marriage, Charlotte Jackson was a good wife. She really made an effort to find out her husband's likes and dislikes. She really learned how to cook his favorite dishes. On Sundays, she really learned to be quiet when the Denver Broncos were on TV. Charlotte Jackson also managed to lose 30 pounds. Then she handed them back. Then she would lose 10, 20 pounds just to gain them back, plus another 30 or 40 pounds. Charlotte's skin did improve a bit, but she always had acne scars on her cheeks. Cosmetics did reduce the severity of the appearance of scars, but they were always visible. When Tracy went to Grover Cleveland Elementary School, Charlotte was hired by the Garland County Public Library. The payment was minimal at best, but the benefits were huge. Medical insurance and dental insurance were well worth the low salary. Then, just after they celebrated their 16th year of marriage, Charlotte's cousin Darlene returned to Dolans, Utah from God knows where. Darlene was dragging husband number 3 or 4 with her. Darlene was loud, brash, obscene, and Gary, her husband, wasn't much better. Worse, Gary was a Dallas Cowboys fan. Darlene was not a good influence on her cousin. Charlotte became noisy, brash, and complaining. She began to neglect household chores, including cooking. Ronnie didn't mind. He was a good cook. He was no stranger to cleaning a pot or a couple of pots. But from time to time, slackening suddenly became almost every evening when Charlotte, Darlene, and Gary found something to do outside the Jackson house. Tracy also learned how to clean, cook, and sew buttons to her school uniform. But for some reason, it seemed that Tracy was offended by her father, not her mother. For her mother's dismissive behavior, Ronnie timed his work almost perfectly. 3 hours after Charlotte's phone call, he was finishing the threshold at the entrance, from the kitchen to the living room. He stood up slowly and straightened his back with difficulty. Dear God, I'm getting too old for this, Ronnie thought as he gathered up his tools and the few remaining tiles. After leaving the Pritchard house, Ronnie called John Ackles. He still flinched whenever he heard the man's slurred speech. The blow almost killed the big man, and his recovery was slow. John suffered a massive stroke minutes after his wife Lois admitted she had breast cancer. Thus, even after a double mastectomy while undergoing radiation treatment, Lois was burdened with caring for her husband. Dennis Ackles, Brian Ackles, and Paul Ackles did everything they could to help. Ronnie also helped take care of John Ackles when needed. Charlotte Ackles, the only girl in the family, was her mother's constant companion. It was Charlotte who took her mother to the hospital in Fairway and held her mother's hand while she sobbed weakly in pain. Lois lost the fight by succumbing to the disease. John also seemed to have lost the will to live, but death didn't seem to want to take the Jonathan Dennis Ackles yet. So John was brought to the office on a gurney day after day. Day after day, John sat at his desk and cursed his useless left hand as he tried to type on the computer keyboard. Then, at the end of the day, Dennis, Brian, or Paul would drive John home. Yes, sir, I'm leaving Pritchard's job now. It's over, Ronnie said as John grunted, barked, and wheezed into the phone. At home, Ronnie sniffed the air with pleasure. Pork chops, mashed potatoes, and French chopped green beans were one of his favorite dishes. After John's debilitating stroke, Charlotte switched the Jackson family to a heart-healthy diet. The diet helped Charlotte lose 40 pounds, but she was still pretty full. Ronnie accused Tracy of leaving home and going to Brigham Young University just to avoid eating the tasteless dishes that Charlotte fed them. And Tracy didn't deny that fact. Ronnie bent down to kiss his wife while she was busy at the stove. She waved him away and pinched her nostrils, throwing his clothes into the basket. Ronnie washed the sweat off his stiff, aching body. This job was quite grueling when he was a young man of 21. Now, at 43, it was at the limit of his abilities and certainly did not add to his health. But Dennis, Brian, and Paul weren't going to pay attention to it. And due to the mounting medical bills associated with John Ackles' rehabilitation, Dennis, Brian, and Paul said there was no money in the budget to hire someone to help. Drying himself with a towel, Ronnie ignored the handsome, muscular man in the steamed-up mirror. Ronnie was wearing a t-shirt and shorts. Then he came downstairs just as Charlotte was putting his plate in front of his chair. "And there's a hot apple pie for dessert," Charlotte announced, setting a frosted mug and a can of beer in front of him. "Oh my God," Ronnie said. Despite the fact that a lump of bile had formed in his stomach, Ronnie remembered the last time Charlotte had poured him a mug of frosted beer. At that time, he was smiling, enjoying a refreshing drink on her 35th birthday, a few months before their 17th anniversary. While Tracy was out with friends, Charlotte poured Ronnie a beer into a frosted mug. Ronnie sipped the icy drink, enjoying the taste. Then Charlotte said, "Darling, there's something I need to talk to you about." A lot of words about nothing followed as Ronnie continued to stare at his wife without saying a word. Finally, Ronnie said, "Of course, I would like you to just get down to business." Charlotte stared at Ronnie, then said that Darlene and Gary were swingers. They had an open marriage. Charlotte then asked Ronnie if he had ever thought about making love to other women. "Of course I'm a man. Of course, I was looking at that Shelley girl at the gas station," Ronnie admitted. "Shelley at the gas station? Yeah, right? Like you'd ever have a chance with her," Charlotte snorted. "But I'm married," Ronnie continued. "So yes, I think about it, and then everything stops right there." "But, did you think it wouldn't stop right there?" Charlotte continued. "Did you assume that you can go ahead and do what you want? You could do that and then come home without thinking about the consequences." "But I can't do that, Charlotte," Ronnie said. "We're married. We made vows. In front of all our relatives and friends, we made these vows." He drained his mug and got to his feet. He took the mug to the sink and washed it. "We swore to be true to each other. We swore to leave everyone else. And even that Shelley girl at the gas station," Ronnie said. "But we could make new vows," Charlotte suggested. "No new vows," Ronnie said decisively, putting the wash glass in the cupboard. "These old vows work just fine. Both Darlene and Gary may be in an open marriage, but we are not. We are not and will never be in an open marriage." But Charlotte said no. There are no buts. "End of discussion," Ronnie said, leaving the kitchen. Ronnie hoped that would be the end of it, but it didn't happen. Twice more Charlotte raised the idea of an open marriage, and twice more Ronnie said, "But honey," Charlotte whimpered, "it would just be a confirmation of our love for each other. We love each other enough to let each other do this because we trust each other." Holy Mother, do you even hear the complete and utter nonsense that you're trying to carry? Ronnie said, "No, Charlotte, if I need to let you spread your legs like your cousin to show you that I love you, then I probably don't love you." The fourth time Charlotte talked about opening their marriage, Ronnie called her father. Charlotte sat watching as her cell phone rang. "Hi, John. How are you?" Ronnie said. Charlotte's face paled when she realized that Ronnie was talking to her father. Then, to make matters worse, Ronnie asked to talk to Lois. "Hi, Lois, listen. Charlotte wants to tell you something," Ronnie said. "Here, Charlotte, tell your mom what horse shit Darlene fed you." Charlotte took the cell phone from Ronnie's outstretched hand. Then she tried to get up from the kitchen table. Ronnie anticipated this move and held Charlotte in her place, holding her in place with a heavy hand. Trapped, Charlotte chatted about complete nonsense and finally ended the conversation. "You bastard," Charlotte growled at Ronnie with hatred. "Listen, Charlotte," and listen carefully, Ronnie hissed. "Bring up this nonsense about an open marriage again, and you won't have a marriage that can be opened. We'll just get divorced." And Charlotte didn't bring it up again. Ronnie felt relieved. His persistence also seemed to cool Darlene and Gary's attempts to communicate with Ronnie. The toxic twins, as Ronnie dubbed them, stopped showing up so often in the house. Now, 5 years later, Ronnie was watching his wife pour him a mug of beer. He watched as the foam almost reached the top of the mug. Charlotte was not very good at pouring beer. "You know, I'm turning 40 next Tuesday." Charlotte began as Ronnie chewed the first piece of pork chop. "Yes," Ronnie said, swallowing. "And I was a virgin when you and I met." Charlotte continued. "I'm not sure how these two facts coincide, but okay, you're turning 40, and you were a virgin," Ronnie said, taking a second bite of pork chop. "I mean 40. The big four," Charlotte said. "And in all that time, what? I've only had one man." "Lucky for you. That man was me," Ronnie said. "Did you use bacon with string beans?" "In them. But you had what? At least 10 women?" Charlotte asked. "I mean, is that fair?" "Life isn't always fair," Ronnie said, sipping his beer. "So I thought, since my birthday's coming up, the big four, And after taking care of you, Tracy, my mom and dad, all this time, I deserve to, let my hair down, go out a little. So Darlene and I are going to Las Vegas next week. She made a great deal with him for a week at one of the casinos, Charlene said. Ronnie continued to eat. He swallowed his piece, then washed it down with another sip of beer. And while we're there, we could, meet a couple of guys, Charlotte insisted. Just let me experience what another man is like. Make me appreciate even more what I have at home, The sauce is almost perfect, Ronnie said. So what do you think? Charlotte asked. I told you, the sauce is almost perfect, Ronnie said. No, Ronnie, this is for me. I want to spread my wings, gain experience, Charlotte snapped. You mean by spreading your legs? Ronnie asked. Look, I've already made up my mind, Charlotte snapped. So you can either let me do this or get a divorce. Okay, I'll file for divorce, Ronnie agreed. Is there any ice cream for this pie? Wait, what? Ronnie, you know how expensive divorce is. You can't even talk about it. Charlotte gasped, stunned. What is there to talk about? You're just sitting right here, telling me that you've already decided everything. You and your dirty cousin are going to Vegas. You're not asking me about it. You've already decided that you're going to Vegas? To hell with the mountain of bills we have here. You're going to Las Vegas to celebrate the Big Four, and while you're there, you can have a date. Even if you are a married woman, you can have a date. Then you're telling me that I can either go along with this plan of yours or get divorced? Ronnie said, pushing his empty plate away. This pie, does it come with any ice cream? But it's only for 1 week, Charlotte said. 1 week, 1 day, 1 minute, doesn't matter. Charlotte, Ronnie said, cutting himself a piece of pie. Cheating is cheating, and I refuse to be married to a cheating fool. So no ice cream. Damn it, you can take Darlene, Charlotte offered. Oh my God, no. Ronnie laughed. Oh my God, this cheater? Charlotte, I wouldn't use Darlene even if she was the last woman on earth. Ronnie blew on a piece of pie, then popped it into his mouth. He twisted his face in disgust. Oh great, it's just great. You used that shit with aspartame, didn't you? Ronnie asked, pushing his plate away. Ronnie got to his feet, wiping his mouth with a napkin, and left the kitchen. Don't worry, I'll meet with a lawyer tomorrow and start this divorce, Ronnie said. Heading up the stairs, Pritchard's job was done, and Dennis wasn't planning anything else until he got permission to start rebuilding the federal savings and loan back. But Ronnie, Charlotte exclaimed, you're not even listening to me. Of course, Ronnie shouted as he went down the stairs. You weren't listening to me. Didn't I tell you what would happen if you picked up that shit again? We're getting divorced. Well, you brought it up again. So we're getting divorced. In the third bedroom, which they identified as the home office, Ronnie turned on the computer. He was 7 years old, outdated, but still working and connected to the internet. After typing in a search query, Ronnie began searching for lawyers. He saw that Penny Barnes had an online form, and he filled it out. A moment later, a call alerted him that he had an appointment with Penny Barnes at 10 the next morning. After tidying up the kitchen, Charlotte went up the stairs. She undressed and climbed naked into bed. Ronnie was almost surprised when Charlotte pressed her flabby body against him, rubbed her thick pubic hair against him. No thanks, Ronnie said, and rolled away from Charlotte. Good night. Ronnie woke up at the usual time. At 5:30 in the morning, he didn't have to go to work, but he still woke up at his usual time. He quietly slipped out of bed and quietly closed their bedroom door. Downstairs, he made coffee, then used his cell phone to check his email. Penny Barnes's office sent him an email describing what he was supposed to take with him to the meeting. At 7 o'clock, Ronnie was arguing with himself about whether to drink a second cup of coffee. He heard Charlotte trampling upstairs and decided not to do anything for her. If she wanted a cup, she could make her own coffee. No, I told him give it to me, or Charlotte was talking on her cell phone as she walked down the stairs. She screamed when she saw Ronnie sitting at the table and calmly reading the news on his mobile phone. She interrupted the phone conversation and put her cell phone in the pocket of her robe. Ronnie, what are you doing here? Charlotte asked. I told you, Dennis hasn't received permission to start rebuilding the Federal Savings and Loan Bank yet. So I have nothing to do today, Ronnie shrugged. Right now, the grass is too wet to cut. So I'm reading today's news. Do you know that Burns & Burns is thinking about opening a second store? This one will be right there in Pulaski. You could have left me some coffee, Charlotte snapped. Ask Darlene to make you something, Ronnie said, putting his cup in the sink. Penny Barnes was an attractive brunette. Ronnie suspected that her glasses were only put on to make her look smarter and more serious. Penny said, looking through their financial statements. Did you just refinance the house at 3.9%? My daughter is in her senior year, Ronnie said. And the father-in-law has a lot of medical bills. And the mother-in-law's medical bills were with minimal coverage. They both had a deductible, which was simply unrealistic than funeral expenses. Then ACL's was on the verge of bankruptcy. A couple of jobs went over budget because Paul doesn't seem to remember to calculate orders correctly. Yeah, Penny agreed, continuing to read. So, Mr. Jackson, when you divorce your employer's daughter, how will it affect your work? I think I'm done with him, Ronnie said, and a smile touched his lips. But Mrs. Jackson's work at the Garland County Public Library shouldn't be affected, Penny mused. By Friday, Dennis still had not received permission to begin the reconstruction of the Federal Savings and Loan Bank. So Ronnie was at home finishing some repairs at the Jackson house when Charlotte called. What is it? What kind of divorce? Charlotte screamed when Ronnie answered. Oh well, you have the papers, Ronnie said. So, what's wrong with the bathroom on the ground floor? You said something needed to be fixed, but I'm damned if I can tell what's wrong here. The lock is jammed, Charlotte said. You and me? We'll have to talk when I get home. Do you hear? No, we've already talked. Talking doesn't seem to do any good, as long as you want to listen to Darlene and not your husband. So no, the time for talking has passed, Ronnie said. Yes, I see what's going on. Okay, got it. But I don't want a divorce, Charlotte whimpered. And I don't want to be married to a brainless cheater, Ronnie said. Anything else? No? By then, Ronnie ignored Charlotte's next call. When John's phone number came up, Ronnie put down the screwdriver and picked up the phone. Hello, Ronnie said. John barked, grunted, and bellowed. Ronnie was really amazed at how many swear words he could understand when his father-in-law demanded to know what was going on between Ronnie and Charlotte. It's actually quite simple, sir, Ronnie said. Darlene and her husband seem to have an open marriage, and they convinced Charlotte that she should have an open marriage too. You know, where they can run and make love to whoever they want and somehow still stay married. Well, I told Charlotte that I have no desire to enter into an open marriage. John grunted, squeaked, and slurred his way through another outburst of anger. Ronnie shook his head as if John could see the gesture. Well, last night your daughter said I could either go along with it or get a divorce. So I'm getting a divorce, Ronnie said. John tried to argue with Ronnie again. The man even resorted to emotional blackmail. Well, sir, I appreciate it. I really do, Ronnie lied. But you have 3 sons and a daughter. You really should leave this matter to them, sir. Not me. Plus, what the hell do I need a company that has been in the red for the last 3 years? Ronnie told himself Charlotte brought reinforcements with her when she returned home. Ronnie had anticipated this and sat quietly while Darlene and Gary made their point. So you see, Ronnie, since our marriage is not threatened by other men, Gary said with a smug expression on his face, Darlene is free to form friendships outside of the marriage. Hey, as long as I know she's coming back to my house, you know? And of course, I share all my experiences with him, Darlene said. There are no secrets between us. It really opened our hearts, our lives to each other. Oh, well, that clears it up, of course, Ronnie said, and Charlotte, Darlene, and Gary smiled. No, Ronnie said, and got up from the couch. But hey, Charlotte, after we get divorced, you can open your heart, your life, to anyone you want, even to fans of cowboy brain shit. Oh, what do I see? Gary chuckled. So just because you feel inadequate, Charlotte has to close the door to her own capabilities and needs. Ronnie flashed a smile that showed all his teeth. He walked to the living room door and turned to the stairs. If you need to think like that to feel better, by all means, keep thinking like that, Ronnie said and left the room. Charlotte stumbled, surprised that he knew about the new underwear she'd bought for the trip. Go to sleep, Charlotte. You have a busy day tomorrow, don't you? Ronnie chuckled. As usual, Ronnie woke up at 5:30 and got out of bed. He no longer bothered to close their bedroom door, not caring if his wife would wake him up early or not. He went downstairs and made himself a cup of coffee, and he sat sipping coffee and reading the news on his phone. The national news made him snort in disgust. Politicians, I swear, they all need to be gathered, forced to live by their own rules. Lifetime maintenance? Oh no, you try to live on Social Security. Private medical care? Oh no, here's the insurance policy that you made America buy into. At 11 in the morning, Gary knocked on the door. Ronnie opened the door and Gary tried to enter the house. Ronnie's heavy hand stopped the grinning asshole's progress. Yes, Ronnie asked. Hey, I'm here to pick up Charlotte and take them to the airport, Gary said, trying to force his way into the house again. I'll let her know you're here, Ronnie said and pushed Gary back. Then he closed the door and went back to watching his pre-recorded sitcom. A few moments later, Charlotte clattered down the stairs, dragging her suitcase. Yeah? Why didn't you let me know that Gary and Darlene were waiting for me outside? She demanded of Ronnie. Oh yes, Gary and Darlene are here, Ronnie said, turning his attention back to his program. Oh my God, really? Really? Do you have to be so childish about all this? Charlotte screamed. She put down her suitcase and leaned over to Ronnie. He pulled away from her, so she ended up kissing an empty spot. We'll talk about it when I get back, Charlotte said. No, we won't do that. We really won't do that, Ronnie said. After his sitcom and after a hearty meal, Ronnie completed the last of his household chores by painting the front door of the house. He chose a pale yellow, and this color contrasted pleasantly with the red brick facade of the house. He grinned when their cat Samson meowed irritably from the garage. The animal had food, water, and a clean tray with filler in the garage. He had nothing to ask for. As soon as the door is dry, buddy, I'll let you out of there, Ronnie promised the beast. Back upstairs, Ronnie logged in and canceled their joint credit cards. He didn't know about any credit cards his wife had in her name and had no desire to look. But he wasn't going to finance his wife's infidelity or her cousin's extravagance. He logged into Charlotte's personal bank account and withdrew half of the balance. He also logged into their joint account, of which he was the only contributor, and withdrew half. The bank's website helped him open a new account in his own name only, and he transferred the money withdrawn from other accounts to his new account. Again, online accounts made it easy to remove his name from utilities and cable TV. He shrugged when Garland County Power and Light Company sent him an email informing him that his cancellation order would not take effect until the end of the billing cycle. I don't give a shit, Ronnie said to the computer screen. Go to Sloan's Pizza, Ronnie told himself as his stomach rumbled. Of course, since Charlotte wouldn't let me eat there, damn. I guess I'll probably drop dead of a heart attack right there. Let's check it out. Ronnie ordered a pizza and a mug of draft beer. He was actually flirting with the waitress, even though the girl was almost 75 pounds overweight. The young woman smiled and tapped his wedding ring with her 3-inch fingernail. Ronnie looked at the ring and his good mood evaporated. He thanked the fat woman and left her a $5 tip. In his truck, Ronnie tugged on the ring for a long time and breathed a sigh of relief when it finally came off. He dropped it into the cup holder on the console and looked at his hand. I'll love you forever, won't I? Charlotte? Ronnie asked out loud. Well, I think eternity ended this morning. His truck let out a soft squeak, and Ronnie saw that his gas tank was almost empty. He stopped at a gas station and stuck a gun in the tank. He was about to pour $10, but then decided to fill up the full tank. He pressed the right buttons and waited. Damn it, 22 gallons takes time, doesn't it? Ronnie asked the pump, which was gurgling and gurgling. He went into a nearby convenience store and found a Budweiser beer. As he passed another row of refrigerators, Ronnie saw ice cream containers. He grabbed a pint of strawberry ice cream and carried both to the counter. Shelley no longer worked at the gas station. She got married, breaking Ronnie's heart and the hearts of many other men, who stopped at this particular gas station just because of the blonde beauty behind the counter. But Shannon Carlisle, the short brunette who worked there now, was almost as pretty as Shelley. Ronnie smiled as Shannon hopped onto the milk crate she had placed in front of the cash register. One day he asked her how tall she was, and Shannon looked at him intently, On 4 feet, 8 inches tall, the 19-year-old snapped. "And how short are you?" About 7 inches, Ronnie joked. Her brown eyes widened. Then the girl laughed, a deep, lively laugh that made her pretty face light up. And from that day on, Shannon called Ronnie Shorty. Has the wife left town? Shorty, Shannon concluded, looking at the purchase. My wife has left completely, period, Ronnie said. Shannon's dark brown eyes darted to Ronnie's left hand. Her eyes darted up and met Ronnie's. She studied his face for a few moments. So, baby, where are you taking me on our first date? What is it? She asked brazenly, brushing her thick brown hair back with her hand. Shannon, no matter how pretty you are, what on earth do you want from an old fart like me? Ronnie asked That's about 7 inches, Shannon said, and shoved Ronnie's purchases into the back. Charlotte's 40th birthday was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Tracy, the daughter of Ronnie and Charlotte, called Ronnie on her cell phone. Eccles Renovation and Remodeling. This is Ronnie, Ronnie replied. Dad, it was Mom's birthday yesterday, Tracy said. Hand asked Ronnie, scratching his 3-day-old stubble. Why didn't you call her? Tracy screamed. I didn't want that, Ronnie said. I didn't want to. Dad, why? Tracy hissed. I think you'll find out soon enough, Ronnie said. Your mother decided that since she's 40 now, she should go outside and make love to other men. And what? Tracy asked. And what? Jesus Christ. What do they teach you in this school? Ronnie asked. She's married, and married women don't make love to men. They're not married to. Oh my God, that's so old-fashioned. Tracy chuckled. Goodbye, Tracy, Ronnie said, ending the conversation. 10 minutes later, his cell phone rang again. Despite the fact that he saw it with Charlotte's cell phone, Ronnie answered the call. Eccles Renovation and Remodeling. This is Ronnie, he said automatically. Hi, Ronnie, Charlotte said in a firm voice. Hello, how do you like being a 40-year-old cheater? Ronnie asked. It's not funny, Ronnie. Charlotte snapped. Well, I don't think it's funny either. Ronnie agreed. Oh, and thank you so much for canceling the credit cards. Charlotte continued. You're welcome, Ronnie said. Anything else? My birthday was yesterday, Ronnie. Charlotte said. Why didn't you call? I didn't want that. But hey, maybe whoever you're making love to will want to wish you a happy birthday. Huh? Asked Ronnie. Oh my God, grow up. Ronnie, Charlotte snapped. Already, Charlotte, and the adults. What? They are fulfilling their obligations. They respect their vows, Ronnie said. So Melissa Calick? Who? Charlotte asked. Melissa Calick. Her name used to be Melissa Strom. Do you remember her? The pretty little blonde who went to school with Tracy. Did she marry this Lucy Calick, the bank manager? Anyway, she now works at Gold Standard Real Estate. And I have this cute little redhead. Dear God, she's pretty as a pin. I'm telling you. But anyway, the good news is that she thinks she can find us a buyer for our house very quickly. Ronnie said, Ronnie, we're not selling the house. Charlotte shouted into the phone. Oh, do you really think you can afford to buy me out? Remember, we need to pay off the second mortgage. And that's what Melissa told me. She can find us a buyer, but we'll probably have to bring cash to the table to pay off this mortgage. Ronnie said, We're not selling the house. Charlotte screamed again. And I put all your furniture in that easy warehouse on Independence Road. Right next to Chevrolet Place, Ronnie continued. Block 212. Your father has the key. Oh my God, Darlene. I need to go home. Ronnie heard Charlotte moan. But your dad couldn't pick up Samson. So I took him to Dennis. Ronnie continued. Dennis, Ronnie, my God, Dennis has these Dobermans. Charlotte screamed in horror. Oh shit, that's right. I hadn't thought of that. Ronnie chuckled. No wonder he said he would be happy to take this cat. Well then, Ronnie hung up the phone, ignoring his wife's screams and pleas. Leaving his phone on the kitchen table, he went upstairs and logged on to the internet. He heard his cell phone ring but ignored it. Aye, maybe your mom's new boyfriend can pay for the last year of school. Young lady, Ronnie muttered. Hey, why don't you see if you have a scholarship there for students who have an average score of 2 and 1? Because after all, with this attitude, it's hard to expect your father to pay for your tuition. Ronnie snapped, turning off the computer. Ronnie went into the bathroom and lathered his face. Scraping off 3 days' worth of stubble was hard and painful work, but he managed to do it without cutting himself. He took a hot shower, dried off, and put on jeans and a t-shirt. The computer was placed in the cab of the pickup truck behind the passenger's seat. His last act was to throw his mobile phone in the trash. Then Ronnie rolled the trash can to the curb. "I'm gonna miss you, Herman Fogart," a neighbor across the street said when he met Ronnie on the side of the road. "Fogart, the hell you're gonna do that?" Ronnie laughed, shaking the man's hand. "The only time we said more than 2 words to each other was when you complained about Tracy's guys playing their music too loud. And do you know how hard it is to get the neighbors to leave you alone?" "Damn it," Herman said. "You were the perfect neighbor. Never borrowed my shit. Never expected me to feed your cat. Never asked me to pick up your mail or newspapers when you went on vacation. I bet the next group will be at my house all the time. Serves you right for being so warm and friendly," Ronnie said. "The trash can is ringing," Herman said, nodding his head in the direction of the trash can. "Mind your own business. It's some kind of rat," Ronnie smiled, and the 2 men shook hands again. Charlotte tried to open the front door with her key and found that the key did not fit. She took her phone out of her purse and tried to call the phone number of the Gold Standard Real Estate Agency listed on the sign. She stared at him in disbelief. Her phone was fully charged, but apparently there was something wrong with her phone. Darlene let Charlotte use her cell phone while Gary walked around the house checking windows and doors. Charlotte muttered obscenities under her breath when the call was answered. "Gold Standard Real Estate. This is Melissa Calick," Melissa said cheerfully. "Yes, this is Charlotte Jackson." Charlotte snapped. "I'm standing in front of my house, and Mikey doesn't work." "Jackson? Oh, Ronald Jackson's ex-wife?" Melissa said cheerfully. Wife, Charlotte snapped. "Oh, I'm so glad to hear from you." "I need you to sign a couple of forms," Melissa said cheerfully. "Oh, and you won't believe it, but I have a couple of clients. They are really interested in your home." "The house is not for sale," Charlotte shouted into the phone. "Oh, so you're going to buy Mr. Jackson out?" Melissa asked. "I know the Richmonds will be very disappointed to hear this." Well, they also liked Purcell's house. Gary returned and reported that the house was tightly sealed. Charlotte told Melissa again that the house was not for sale. Then she dialed Ronnie's cell phone number. At a landfill in Cutlersfield, Utah, a rat escaped when something made a pleasant ringing sound. The animal went in search of food a few feet from the noisy pile of garbage. "You bastard!" Charlotte growled when Ronnie's voice announced that she had called Eccles Renovations and Remodeling. "Come on, is there a place where we can drop you off?" Gary asked, who was already bored with this drama. "My cat," Charlotte remembered, squeezing back into the car. "Yeah," Dennis answered. "Dennis, it's me. Did Ronnie say that he gave Samson to you?" Charlotte asked, "What? Are you crazy? Or Popeye? Olive Oil and Bluto here. They would have torn that useless cat to pieces." Dennis snapped angrily. No, Dad has it, and you need to pick him up quickly." "Dad's physiotherapist is allergic to cats." "Oh, thank God," Charlotte sighed. "Thanks a lot," Dennis continued. "For Ronnie's disappearance, we are almost out of business now. I got a permit for federal savings and loans, but then I had to turn around and let Fremont take it away because none of us know how to lay ceramic tiles." "Aha," Charlotte said and broke off the conversation. "Hey, how many people are you going to call?" Darlene snapped when Charlotte started dialing her father's phone number. "What? You have unlimited money, right?" Charlotte asked. "Oh no, it's not like that," Darlene said. "I have 1,000 minutes a month, and I know that that genius over there spent them all on his fantastic football nonsense." "Last call," Charlotte promised. John ranted, raged, and hurled obscenities at his daughter. Reluctantly, however, he agreed so that she could come to his house. Gary drove to John Ackles' house and took Charlotte's suitcase out of the trunk. Darlene and Charlotte hugged. Then Charlotte rolled her suitcase to the door. "So how was it?" Gary asked Darlene as she climbed into the front seat of the car. "God, what a disaster," Darlene sighed. "I mean, look at her." "Okay, do you think anyone would want to use it?" "Not when you're sitting next to her." Gary agreed as they watched Charlotte enter her father's house. "But did you get any money from her?" "Almost," Darlene sighed as Gary backed out of the long driveway. "Ronnie, God, I hate this hole in my ass. Do you hear me?" He canceled all her credit cards, and she had to use her debit card. "But there are ATMs everywhere," Gary reminded her. "Heck, got about $10? We need gasoline." "Yes, there are ATMs everywhere, and she's online. You can do that when your dumbest hubby isn't wasting your minutes on fantasy football. Darlene snapped. Yes, here's a 20. Yeah, so she went online. What does this have to do with ATMs? Gary asked as he pulled up to the gas station. She saw that Ronnie had taken half of her bill. Darlene said, just get 10. Okay, we still have to pay the electricity bill. Unless you've already paid for it. Gary nodded and entered the attached convenience store. Darlene watched as Gary turned to the beer cooler and quickly bleated into the car horn. Gary frowned at her through the mirrored glass of the store window, but turned back to the counter. I was just going to buy 1 jar. Gary lied when he returned to the car. Yeah, 1. Darlene snapped. When was the last time you received 1 jar? Oh, hey, does this little dwarf work here now? Gary asked. While Darlene and Gary were arguing, Charlotte was listening to her father's angry lecture. Since he had a stroke, John has used quite a lot of vulgarities in conversation, and he didn't seem to mind using hateful, hurtful words to describe the people around him. I mean, seriously, when have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately? John asked, a fat fucking pig in that face? It looks like it caught fire and they put it out with an ice axe. Dad, Charlotte gasped, truly hurt by his words. So you're turning 40. Big deal. Women turn 40 every fucking day. Damn it, John growled, but not every one of them turns into a dumb fucking cheater just because she's 40. He pointed to the legal documents on the coffee table. Samson chose this moment to enter the living room. We need to hire a lawyer, and I need to clean this damn useless cat damn tray. John snapped. Jesus Christ, I don't know what the hell this animal is eating. But damn it, it stinks like hell. John turned abruptly and pushed off. The left corner of his mouth was slightly open and he was drooling. You're in your old room, John snapped. Damn it, I hope it was damn worth it. Do you hear that? I hope to hell it was worth it. 40 fucking years, and still a damn fool. That night, lying in her old bed and looking at the wallpaper that she and her mother had but chosen when she was 8 years old, Charlotte sighed. Samson didn't move when Charlotte turned off the light and stared at the dark ceiling. The week dedicated to her 40th birthday began so promisingly. The flight on the plane was smooth and easy. Charlotte was looking out the window when the sparkling city of Las Vegas appeared below them. Worried, Charlotte and Darlene checked into their hotel room. They then rushed downstairs and spent a few dollars at the roulette table before deciding to have dinner. Charlotte was offended when a handsome waiter informed her that her credit card had been declined. The second credit card was also declined, and the manager brought the second card to the table with a heavy look on his face. Charlotte took out her debit card and prayed that it would work. Fortunately, this happened, and the manager brought her the card and her receipts. Back in the room, Charlotte checked her bank account and found that it had been reduced by 50%. Both Charlotte and Darlene cursed Ronnie Jackson. Both agreed that this man had gone too far. Really too far. Come on, girl, Darlene encouraged. We're in Vegas. Vegas! We can't let this hole in the ass ruin our good time, can we? But watching Darlene lose $300 at the blackjack table spoiled the festive mood of that evening a little. It was Charlotte's $300. Charlotte actually managed to pick up a handsome young man in a bar. 25-year-old David Daltrey went with Charlotte to her room. Then Charlotte saw David trying to steal her wallet from her purse. Darlene complained that she was limited to $100 a day. Lady Luck and Darlene did not meet during this trip to Vegas. The $100 seemed to evaporate in Darlene's hand the moment she left their hotel room. On Tuesday evening, the night of her birthday, Charlotte tried to pick up a handsome young man again. The young man grinned, then leaned closer. Charlotte leaned closer, giggling in anticipation. Lady, if I wanted to use some 300-pound cheater, I'd be at home with my wife, he said. But, hey, I heard there's a blind convention 2 hotels away. Why don't you try your luck there? Fat ass. Suffering from an insulting rejection, Charlotte took the elevator to their room. She groaned when she saw the Do Not Disturb sign around the door handle. Then Charlotte went down to the coffee shop in the lobby and had a cup of coffee for a couple of hours. Finally, Charlotte sent Darlene a message telling her that she was returning to the room. Returning to her room, Charlotte was relieved to see that the sign was no longer there, and entered the room. After a hot shower, pulling on beautiful underwear over her plump body, Charlotte lay in a large, comfortable hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. Then she realized that Ronnie hadn't called. Her husband didn't call to wish her a happy birthday. Tracy didn't call either, but the girl sent her a text message wishing her a happy birthday. Checking her mobile phone did let Charlotte know that her husband hadn't even bothered to send her a text message. However, Charlotte smiled in response to Dennis, Brian, and Paul's happy birthday greetings. And in the morning, Darlene complained bitterly about the budget that Charlotte had limited them to. Darlene even pointed out that she was the one who paid for the flight and the hotel room. By Saturday morning, Charlotte was thinking very seriously about telling her cousin that it was over between them. Blood relatives or not, Charlotte had more than enough of Darlene's constant complaints. But Darlene had their airline tickets in her purse, so Charlotte remained silent. Now, lying in her old bed in her old room, Charlotte sighed heavily. Her big 4-week wasn't a big celebration. Jim Runkles was an attorney recommended by Freddie Baxter, Charlotte's supervisor, at the Garland County Public Library. The man looked through the papers from Penny Barnes's office, then looked at his client. And it sounded very harsh and dry. He gets half, you get half. The house must be sold. Any profits must be divided in half. Any expenses? They should also be divided in half. He's not asking for alimony, even though he's basically unemployed now, Jim said. But I don't want a divorce, Charlotte whimpered. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want. Mrs. Jackson, it really doesn't matter, Jim sighed. It's a terrible truth. Does one person out of 2 say they want a divorce? Well, you know what? They can get divorced. A consultation? Charlotte asked. Okay, we can request a consultation, Jim said, and Charlotte smiled. I'll call Penny's office. Charlotte listened to what Jim was saying. She studied the titles of the books in his bookcase, as there seemed to be little more than a ha in him on Jim's part. Okay, Mrs. Jackson, here's the problem, Jim said, putting his cell phone on the table. I'm paying you, so there won't be any problems, Charlotte said. Clutching her purse tightly, Mrs. Barnes has no idea where her client is. Your husband came in, paid her a fee, and left, Jim said. All she has is an email address for him. Does she need it? That's the only way she can contact him. And no, she won't give us an email address, attorney-client privilege. Oh, Charlotte whispered, sinking into a chair. And Ronnie told Mrs. Barnes that from now on, your daughter can pay for her own tuition and dorm room, Jim continued. Something about new traditions or something like that. Any idea what he means by that? No, Charlotte whispered, but I bet Tracy knows. Charlotte did not celebrate her 41st birthday. She dressed for another day at work and left her room. John didn't look up when his daughter kissed him on the cheek. He just stared at his hands, clenched lifelessly in his lap. Do I need anything before I go to work? Charlotte asked. Nah, John muttered. Okay, then I'm leaving. You and Samson behave yourselves, okay? Charlotte said, trying to put as much joy into her voice as possible. Everything is fine. My 2 best men will behave themselves, okay? What the hell do you think we're going to do? John spat, but mostly it was just grumbling, squeaking, and barking. Charlotte took the same route to work that she had taken all last year. From her father's house to the library. She heard her cell phone ring, but waited until she parked the car before looking at the display. Happy birthday, Charlotte read on her mobile phone. Yes, Tracy, great, Charlotte murmured. Happy birthday to me. I'm so excited, I might just shit. But she sent a reply thanking Tracy for her birthday greetings. Charlotte has managed to lose 25 pounds in the year since her 40th birthday. However, no one noticed this. No one has paid any attention to her since Ronnie left. Less than a week after Ronnie left, Charlotte understood everything about Darlene and Gary's open marriage as it was. Darlene and Gary had an open marriage because they didn't love each other. But neither of them had enough money to get rid of the other. So they lived as 2 roommates in a rented trailer, not as husband and wife. There was no affection between them. Darlene and Gary didn't hug. They didn't kiss. Charlotte remembered how Ronnie hugged and kissed her that night when she cooked in pork chops, mashed potatoes, sauce, and green beans with bacon. Ronnie came up to her, wanting to hug and kiss her. She pinched her nostrils. Ronnie smelled of sweat, hard work. After her announcement that she was going to celebrate her 40th birthday in Las Vegas without him, Ronnie no longer hugged or kissed her. The last time Charlotte saw Ronnie, she bent down to kiss him, but he just dodged her kiss. An hour after reading Tracy's text message, her phone rang again. Charlotte read a message from her supervisor asking her if she was running late. Charlotte got out of the car in a daze and headed for the back door of the Cinderblock building. Tracy read her mother's text message thanking her for her birthday greetings. Then Tracy looked at her cell phone. There was a picture of a little girl with a shock of brown hair looking at her. Antoinette Barbara Jackson, 6 pounds 4 ounces, 17 inches long. Read a text message from her father's phone. Tracy really found it rather ironic that her younger sister and her mother had the same birthday. But she didn't think her mother would find any humor in this little fact. Tracy really wondered if her father even remembered that today was her mother's birthday. Shannon Parquet, Becky McMahon, an attractive brunette, said into the phone carpets, tiles, hardwood, and laminate, "Hey, Shorty." The girl called the third line. "Excuse me." Ronnie Jackson said to a young couple who were trying to decide what color hardwood floors they would like for their home. Ronnie waved Bobby East to help the young couple while he answered the phone. The young man nodded in agreement and approached the couple. Ronnie went to the wall phone and pressed the blinking extension number. His gaze swept across the trading floor as he held the phone to his ear. Ronnie was hoping to get an answer from Samuel D. He was trying to get an exclusive contract for the manufacture of all floor coverings for future projects of the developer. Shorty's listening. Ronnie said into the phone, "Well, you know what, Mr. Shorty?" His wife's voice came on the line. "Looks like you put another one in me with your 7 inches. Shannon, are you serious?" Ronnie asked, his mouth hanging open in shock. "I mean, really? Tony hasn't even gotten out of her diapers yet. And I'm going to get another one?" Shannon giggled happily into the phone. "Where are you?" Ronnie asked. "I'm leaving Dr. Pruitt's office right now." Shannon said, "Well, you need to get that gorgeous ass of yours over here right now," Ronnie said. "We're going to the Stone Grill to celebrate." "I think all this attention to my ass is primarily because we got into this mess." Shannon giggled as she pushed Tony's stroller out of the Alliance Square Medical Center into the fierce Texas sun. The 4'8" woman pushed her long hair out of her eyes, looking around. Always being the shortest kid on the block, she learned to look around first before walking. She looked at the scorching sun and smiled. When Ronnie stopped by the gas station to say goodbye to Shannon Carlisle and said he was leaving, she asked him where he was going. Ronnie stared at her for a long moment. Then he shrugged his shoulders. "Why do you want to know this?" he asked. "So I can't tell them where to send my last check?" Shannon said, jumping off her milk crate. "Are you going somewhere warm?" "I already have almost all the snow I can stand. Do you hear? Shannon, what is a gorgeous girl like you want from an old fart like me?" Ronnie asked her. She was about to reply with her usual playful banter. About 7 inches when she looked up at him. She closed her eyes. "What color are my eyes? What is it?" she asked. "Brown? Real dark brown ones." Ronnie replied, "I have a dimple. Which cheek is it on?" Shannon asked, opening her eyes. "The left cheek. And when you smile, one of your teeth is exposed. The one on the right is a little crooked. I mean, not too bad, but it's not straight," Ronnie said. "And why did you come to tell me by baby?" Shannon asked, slipping out from behind the counter. "Hey, Polly, I'm leaving." "I do not know," Ronnie replied as Polly, awkwardly dragging his 312 pounds, left the warehouse. Shannon grinned and grabbed Ronnie's left hand with her right hand. "Polly, I'm leaving." "But you still have 2 hours on your shift," Polly complained. "Cough, cough. I feel sick," Shannon said. "Well, hey, kid, have you ever been to Texas?" At the door of the convenience store, Shannon grinned at the still-stunned Polly. She pushed the door open. Standing in front of the Alliance Square Medical Center, Shannon whispered, "Hey, Ronnie, I love you."